My name is Mark Vladem, the Executive Director of the museum, which includes not only the historic 1917 building, but also the new Vladem Contemporary. Today's lecture, by internationally renowned artist Leo Villareal, is the first in the series held in conjunction with the inaugural year of the Vladem Contemporary. The Vladem Contemporary offers a new forum for the museum to continue its commitment to the art of our time, and will open to the public this Saturday on September 23rd. That opening begins with ribbon cutting at 9:30. The museum will be free to the public all weekend. This lecture series will continue with Susan York on January 26th, Angela Ellsworth on March 29th, and conclude with Jude Chicago and Larry Bell in conversation on April 5th. You will want to make sure not to miss any of those. They're all going to be fantastic programs. This series is sponsored through the generous funding of Maria and Edward Gale and the Gale Family Foundation. A native of Albuquerque, New Mexico, Leo Villareal was raised in El Paso. He earned his BA in sculpture at Yale University in 1990 and a Master of Professional Studies from the Tisch School of Arts Interactive Telecommunications program at New York University in 1994. That same year, Villareal attended Burning Man for the first time and was unable to find his tent. When he returned 4 years later, he attached strobe lights and a microcontroller to his tent as a means of finding it in the dark. He then realized that there was a language present in the strobes. And after that revelation, Villareal began working with light as his primary medium. His work focuses on stripping systems down to their essence to better understand the underlying structures and rules that govern how they work. Using a network of LEDs, his work explores the physical qualities of light through patterns derived from natural phenomena. The resulting forms move, change, interact, and ultimately grow into complex organisms that are inspired by mathematician John Conway's work with cellular automata and a game of life. In recent years, Villareal has received international acclaim for high-profile public works. In 2013, he inaugurated the Bay Lights, a 1.8-mile-long installation of 25,000 white LED lights on San Francisco's Bay Bridge, which has since become a permanent installation. More recently, in April 2021, Villareal completed Illuminated River, which unites 9 bridges in central London into a single monumental work of public art. The New Mexico Museum of Art began talks with Villareal in 2021 to create a permanent installation for its future expansion to Vladem Contemporary. The installation, titled Astral Array, will be available to the public 24 hours a day starting on Thursday. Please welcome Leo Villareal.
Thank you so much for that generous introduction. And I'm just thrilled to be here back home. It was very familiar and wonderful to be here with dear family and friends and all my life. So it's really wonderful to be back in Santa Fe. I'll talk a bit about my journey and how I ended up getting to where I am these days, which has been quite interesting. And I was born in Albuquerque and lived when I was young in Juarez. My dad's was in Chihuahua, and my mother's family was from West Texas, and Marfa in particular. And I was very lucky to have this collision of family history and art history in Marfa. I'm showing you here 2 pictures of I was studying art and saw this work after I finished college. The work of Dan Vladem and James Terrell, and really transformed what I thought art could be, and really kind of bringing it down to the bare minimum. I did a lot of installation sculpture early on and set design, but this is kind of a clarifying moment. And here are a few images of the Chinati Foundation in Marfa, and it was amazing to me that of all the places in the world, Donald Judd came to Marfa, a place that my great-great-grandfather Lucas Bright came in 1885, herding his cattle from East Texas, and that's where he stopped and was one of the founders of Marfa and established a ranch there. It's also the place that Jet went to when he was on his way to Korea, and he saw the landscape and wrote to his parents about how much he appreciated it. I guess in the 70s when he had established himself in New York, decided to come to Marfa and buy the Fort D.A. Russell and many other buildings in Marfa and kind of turn it into his studio. And for himself, permanently installed here is his 100 mailboxes, but also his friends, Vladem and many others, which is a remarkable installation that I'm sure a lot of you know. Terrell is someone that I really was very inspired by, and I had an opportunity to go visit. I've been to it a couple of times. This was pretty early on, this was maybe 20 years ago, when James was working with Skidmore, Owens, and Merrill, boring these tunnels through this extinct volcanic crater just north of Flagstaff. So these are some of the tunnels that they were creating. He was really turning this thing into like a massive artwork and spending tens of millions of dollars shaping the earth. And it really was almost like describing an afterlife, after that experience to see the light at the end of the tunnel, there would be shadows, and as you approach so many of these forms, and you think they're just a light, turn into these, amazing ovals and cuts in the sky, revealing these things, and the simplicity of it really struck me. But also the interaction of artificial light with natural light, which is something that James was working with, and also space. And once you finally get to the top, the inner part of the crater, you lay back, and these amazing, I don't even know what you call it, sculptures, and lay back. And the idea is to create this effect of the vault of heaven and bringing the sky down, which Terrell did masterfully, and it was wonderful to be able to go there and experience it, with him. The other really formative experience I had was going to Birmingham. I studied at Gale as an undergraduate in art, then went to NYU, the Interactive Telecommunications Program, and after that I got an internship in Palo Alto to work at a research lab that Paul Allen had started called Inaugural Research. It was kind of an open-ended place in the 70 Rocks Park, and very excited to go there after 2 years of technology. And this was early days in this world. So during that summer, someone said, let's go out to the desert. We're going to go to Burning Man, the Blackwell Desert, and we're going to burn the sculpture. And, wow, that sounds interesting. And kind of reminded me of someone who was over or something who do in Saturday. So it's part sure that I've been growing. This is Burning Man these days, with about 80,000 people. Next year will be 30 years of going out there. I'm very committed and involved, and take great inspiration. Dear friends that participate. But I'll show you this video that we happened to shoot. This is in 1994, the very first year I ever went to Burning Man. So at that point, there was no gate whatsoever. So if you wanted to go, you could just drive up there. And the only thing there was the man. This is the created by Larry Harvey, the sculpture of the man. And here I am setting my tent. Really going out to explore and getting dark. There were no streets or no way of navigating, and the only thing there is the Burning Man sculpture in the night, and that's pretty much it. So it's a very interesting and disorienting space, and I was really intrigued by this whole notion of getting lost there and how I could get lost as a 20-something-year-old. So I made this beacon for myself. I made this in NYU at the Interactive Telecommunications program. I put it in my suitcase nowadays. This was pre-9/11. You never put something like that in a suitcase nowadays. Absolutely terrifying. Talk about where a container with wires coming out of it. But I mounted it on top of my old home, and it certainly was helpful in getting home at night. My neighbors were fairly grateful, and it was the first time I connected software and light in space. But it was really this epiphany moment that I had. I realized I could pull off the small information. So it started, very simply, and that was in 97, 98, I established my studio in New York, and did this piece at PS1 in 2003 on the side of the building. It was my first public artwork on Jackson Avenue, and really excited to see the way the public responded. And it was led to the Albright Knox and Blues Graduates this year who commissioned this piece, and I'm very grateful to you, Lewis, for creating this. This was in the Gordon Bunchett building, facing the neoclassical building, but I got to add a third layer of light that was sequenced. This artwork was just restored, which I'm also very happy about. It has, even further life. This is the Urban Museum in Kansas City, which worked with Q Sun Woo, Korean architect, and he was very generous and offered me the space in the building to create this artwork. So this was really an exciting moment, and I started working with Newton's laws and all sorts of things to create these patterns and sequences. This is the Brooklyn Academy of Music in the Opera House, and this was supposed to be up for only about 3 months, and this is still up now, almost at least 15 years later. But I think what was interesting is that I was creating something that was working with the languages of the buildings that were already there. And it was sequence light, so it's all about movement and pattern. Here's the National Gallery. This piece was 2008, so this is 15 years. This has been up. And this is 41,000 lights in the tunnel that connects the east and west buildings. And it was somewhat unresolved, even according to Diane Hayes' office, who were the architects of the building, and it was very dark. So we installed this piece. It was supposed to be there for 1 year, but it's still there now because they fell in love with it and became more part of the fabric of it. This is at the Cornell Johnson Museum, another Diane Hayes building. And I'm excited to get to know Cornell. And this piece is called Cosmos, kind of a nod to Carl Sagan, who was at Cornell, and really reflecting on the sky and all the things that were happening in that landscape. Here's the Bleecker Street subway station in New York City. This is the first piece of digital art the MTA has acquired, and this has been there since 2012. And again, it's still going strong, which is great and kind of enlightens the station. Buckyballs, another piece from 2012 in Madison Square Park. And Alice Walton saw this piece and wanted to borrow it from Crystal Bridges in Arkansas, so it went there, and then she decided she wanted to keep it. So it's there waiting for you at Bellevue if you have a chance to go. And it's a truncated icosahedron. And it's a form that was discovered by nanotechnologists at Rice in the 80s and named after Mr. Fuller. But I was intrigued by this form that exists on a very small scale, but that could be expanded to this monumental scale in a park filled with equestrian statues and other things. And how could how could this become something that people could enjoy? Here's another piece in somewhere in New York City. These are mirrored stainless steel rods, and they float just above the surface of the gallery floor. But it's a mirrored surface that's reflecting light and emitting light, which I found quite interesting. And it has this kind of infinite aspect as you look up and see kind of mirrored top. Let's see, this is 2013, the day Lights was launched. And it took 2.5 years from initial idea to completion. And I was asked to think about the Bay Bridge as a canvas and what would I do? So I created this animation. I made this myself with Photoshop and After Effects and some 3D tools to kind of show what it could look like. And it's about a 1.5 minute animation. And what was kind of amazing when I made this is that, people would ask me to show it to Caltrans. Caltrans owns and operates all the bridges and roads in California. And they saw it, and they got very excited. And it's hard to get an organization like Caltrans excited. They were well, maybe we need to do this, which was, I guess, very thrilling. And when I was first asked to think about it, I thought this would probably never happen, but fun to think about. So, based on this animation, we went on a very long journey of how to actually realize this. And so they took me out to visit the Bay Bridge. It's one thing to do it in Photoshop, and a whole other thing to do it in real life. It's 1.8 miles long and 525 feet tall. So they gave me a harness that has a little shock absorber, and they said the shock absorber was in case I did fall off, I wouldn't break my spine. Okay, great, good to know. And then they sent me up on this kind of Home Depot ladder and then started climbing the bridge. So we went up there, and it's really pretty monumental, and there's not much there. But the idea was to attach LEDs to suspend cables to the bridge. But I was very, very inspired by what I was seeing with the interaction with the water and the atmosphere and the fog. And there was so much to work with that I thought, how can I interpret this, and how can I explain this to my programmer? And the sequencing I wanted to make, because I see the artwork as really a mirror of the activity around it. So this was the with some of the views, which are truly spectacular, the interaction, the shadow, the light, all these things. I went up to the New York Times photographer asked me to lean back on this table, which I did. It just took a lot of kind of getting very centered in order to kind of feel comfortable enough to do that. But I did. It makes a good video. Pretty well to enjoy, and I still remember. These are the lights we used for that project, and we mounted them to the suspended cables of the bridge. We did a lot of studies, and they came back with a solution being, we're going to zip tie the lights to the bridge. I thought that's kind of crazy, but that's what we did. So we spent several months installing this piece, and then it came down to me doing my work, which is the sequencing of it. So I created custom software, which I've been doing for over 20 years. I quickly exceeded my abilities as a programmer and found a lot of creative coders over the years I've been able to work with to create the tools that I then use. But they're all made to my specification. So I would sit night after night at the base of the bridge, anywhere I could see it connected live and programming, which was quite exciting. And usually I had a crowd of people around me amazed I was actually controlling the big bridge live. It was definitely a fun party trick. People would call me, they're having a dinner party, and they're like, "Could you turn the lights on?" I'm like, okay. So I just matched the ability for a period of time to do this. So after all this work and programming and huge efforts, finding out the lights on, this is what the Bay Lights looks like. Quite a thrilling and amazing to work with something like this and to really shift the energy in San Francisco and create a work of art that literally probably 100 million people have seen through their own eye, through the media, and it was always about the Golden Gate, but this shifted the attention. It was really something that anyone could look at and have a response to. I thought was very important. That it is for everyone, and it's a very generous thing that I love that it was available and free of charge, and that anyone could look at it and have really a strong relationship with it. So it was up for 2 years. That's the permit we had from Caltrans, and then the piece came down. And there was an uproar in San Francisco. People said this has to come back. This has become part of our lives. And, it was amazing how much people connected with the artwork, and it is all abstract. There's no text, there are no images, but somehow it has a sense of life and energy. And I think the site specificity and the tuning that I did night after night, I often describe it almost as a musical instrument that I had to really work with to get the right tempo, the right brightness, as with all my work, but making it feel right. And that's really the reason I think that people wanted to continue with it. So we marked 10 years this year, and we're in the process of reinstalling it again. This is a very harsh condition with all the vibration and moisture and all the things that happen. So we're I think 80% of the way there with an $11 million fundraising effort to reinstall it. So I think we'll be coming back soon. I'll show you another project. This is in London. There was a competition called the Illuminated River. And the idea was to illuminate the bridges over the Thames in London. And there was an international competition with over 100 teams, including Gale Video, David Adjay. Each of those teams had different artists per bridge. And I went through this long process. Here's Millennium Bridge, how it looked like previous to the installation, which is very problematic for an important bridge like that to just disappear. Here's Summit Bridge, some lights left over from the Olympics or Cannon Street, which are literally just dark. So this is sort of the opportunity. So we spent some time thinking about how we could activate the bridges and how we really think of the Thames as a one continuous ribbon of light. So we started with Tower Bridge all the way to Albert Bridge, thinking of them as a synchronized pattern. So it was for me, also a very interesting journey, thinking about all the artists who worked on the Thames, including Monet and Turner and Whistler, and it became a place of creativity. Here's the jury for the Illuminated River, including James Terrell, which is very exciting, Michael Rick Martin, who's someone I've known. And it was initiated by Lord Rothschild and his daughter Hannah. And so ended up getting shortlisted for it and winning the competition, which was kind of amazing and shocking. And then it went on to how do we actually do this? And all the work in London had to be done with abseilers, so people who hang under the bridges, installing walls certain places you fall in, there's an undercurrent that literally just take you down, and that's it. So quite intimidating to be doing this work. But it's been 2 years since we launched the project. We have 9 bridges that are activated. And it was a huge effort we did it in a couple of phases. The first phase had 4 bridges, from London Bridge to Millennium and Cannon Street. So it was quite labor-intensive, and we did a second phase with 5 more bridges that launched right during the pandemic, which was actually kind of great because it was the perfect kind of pandemic art that people could enjoy and be outside and really have a sense of being able to see it and celebrate instead of kind of sensory pull. So there's a lot of behind the scenes, boring stuff like network cables and fiber optics and all these sorts of things that it takes to actually make this happen, in addition to installing the lights. We finally, after we got it all set up, I got to do my work, so I was in London many times. I spent many nights on the banks of the river, testing things, trying things, working it out. It was pretty exciting to have the Thames be my studio and to work live there. Finally we got to the moment of being able to launch it in the Guildhall. So there's the Lord Mayor and Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, was very supportive of the project, and the Rothschilds. And finally got to the moment of pushing the button, which was very stressful. It didn't go on, they were going to put me in the Tower of London. Unfortunately, it did come off without a hitch. And it was quite exciting to see the bridges that just would disappear into the inky darkness suddenly become activated. And to be what, in the case of Millennium, what Norman Foster's firm had intended for it to be a river flight over the Thames inspired by Flash Gordon, which is a pretty extraordinary kind of pop cultural reference. Here's another little short video I'll show you the second phase. Here's Here's another piece I've been working on this year. We're going to launch it next month at Brown University. This is a new theater, performing art, London Performing Arts Center in Rex, the architects, and it's a really extraordinary space. And there are 30 columns in the lobby. And so each of these columns is clad with LEDs, and it's you can go in and experience it and be among the columns, which is quite exciting. And to create, for me, it was interesting that it was a volumetric piece and that it's stealing space, but also taking light and putting it on the sides of each of these structures. So it's been really exciting way, in a way, kind of transform the columns into something ephemeral, but also interacting with the street. So it has a very strong presence, so you can go by and see it from the exterior. Using very contemporary materials, especially in the context of the campus like Brown, which is so kind of traditional. You're seeing it here in process. There's some white cladding that goes on the sides, so you're seeing the wires hanging out. And me and my kind of mission control programming away. This is sort of behind the scenes. This is what happens, and then suddenly, all that leaves and the art remains. But I'm just interested to see how students use the space. It's all about performance and it's a remarkable theater that was designed by the same architect who just did a theater at Ground Zero in New York City. But it can transform and become a very small black box, so it becomes something that literally these 4-story walls move, they compact, they expand, the ceiling comes down, the floor goes up, and it's really, really exciting. So if you make it to Providence, that's there. I did 2 exhibitions with Pace Gallery earlier this year as well, one in Geneva and one in New York City. The New York show is called Interstellar, and this is a body of work called Nebula. So after London, I got very interested in working with color. I worked with a lot of monochrome pieces. I've done a lot of monochrome pieces, but I've also done a lot of work with color. These are diffused, and they're called nebula, so they're connected to things you might see in the cosmos. But I've also been studying things like the symmetry of flowers and lots of things in nature that seem very complex, but when you boil them down, it turns out that there is this order to them and these rules, which I'm always trying to figure out how to get access to these rules and how to kind of use them. So when I look at something, I'm wondering, I look at the movement of water or something, I'm not using photography to sample and capture it. I'm trying to figure out how that works from a code perspective. So how can I write software that creates a similar patterning? And when I do that, then how can I then play with those tools to better understand these things that we respond to in nature, but then also create my own hybrid forms. So they're intentionally kind of blurred and they're firmly abstract. They kind of resist decoding. But I think after spending time in London with all the atmosphere and thinking about Monet and all sorts of things, I was interested in a limited amount of information and allowing space for a viewer to really see these works and come to their own conclusion, because the brain is hard-coded to recognize pattern, always trying to match something to what we know. And this resists that, and it's not easily defined. But it is pleasurable to look at light and enjoy light, so you see the sequence and there's some information in our brains find that pleasurable. So in a way, I'm taking people on these journeys through these light pieces. And I think it's something that's very different from the way we interact with this digital media in the normal world. There's a lot of advertising and logos and all sorts of things that have a real intention, like go here, do this, buy that. So in a way, I see these pieces as being arrested from that and being able to enjoy that same digital technology. In a way, it's a very pop cultural kind of thing to take these regular flame using some, light bulbs or, Lichtenstein, using these, or Warhol using the silk screen marks and these things that are these, have to do with mechanical reproduction, but taking these materials and using them in a new way, it's transformational, I think it's aligned with those kinds of thoughts. In the last 2 years, I've done 2 generative art projects, which has been a very new, interesting thing for me. So I was working, NFT, those become kind of, a lot of people kind of cringe when we hear these words, and a lot of people are very confused by what that all means. But I think it's a very interesting form and high met a group called Art Blocks, which have a space in Marfa, Texas, and they're very committed to doing generative art. So what that means is it's a little tiny bit of code, and through this online mechanism, people are able to buy purely digital works. So what you're looking at here are some iterations of what I call cosmic bloom. So I was intrigued by this because I had been working with code. I consider myself a sculptor, and that's my primary work. But I found it very interesting that I actually could work purely with code and that people would want to buy these things. So I created Cosmic Reef initially, which was a series of 1,024 individual works with art blocks. And then I did a second piece called Cosmic Bloom with Outland, which is another group. And that was 1,300 pieces. So these pieces are out in the world and online. And you all can go and see every single one of these iterations and see them at full resolution, as anyone can. Only one person can own them. But in a way, I saw this being connected to the work I did in public art, and that the audience has access to all of it. It's very different from the day-to-day art world where you might sell a piece of gallery and you go somewhere and no one ever sees it again. Suddenly here in this new space, it's all available. I see it almost as being more related to a drawing or print, something like that, and not, the primary work that I'm doing. But I find it very interesting, and it's also influenced a lot of my work in sculpture. I'm able to use the tools I've developed to create these online pieces, to do many other works. So I see great utility in that and a great future in it. So I think right now we're going through a lot of tumult in this world, and lots of things that have kind of come and gone. But I think at its core, there is something very interesting in this generative art space and in the space where people can buy and sell digital things. And we'll see what comes out of the ashes of this. But it's something I'm definitely interested in and committed to. I'll show you one more piece. This is an installation that's up right now in Gale Hall in East Hampton. So this is directly related to the NFTs, but this is an LED screen. It's 11 feet tall by 30 feet wide. And it's diffused with a membrane to soften the light. But I was thinking of it almost like a mural, like, one age water lilies, or something like a, Jackson Pollock painting, or even connecting back to a lot of the murals I saw in Mexico when I was young, traveling with my father to see, the Mayo, Cicados, Frida Kahlo, and some of these ideas, these origin stories and these cosmologies and telling the story of how things began. So there are these elements that one thing happens and another thing happens. It's not narrative, but it's something that I've found to be quite interesting. So I'm finding that the online works I do have utility in creating these immersive installations. And these are these zero gravity chairs that I designed in 2001 for the first time. So there are two of these chairs that you can sit and recline and equally distribute your body weight. And it creates a space for a viewer to really be immersed and and the sound is something that early on I used to hold sound installations, and this is something new that we're bringing back into the work. So it's becoming a fuller experience with seating, artist design seating. I'm very interested in the work of John Chamberlain and his marches and ways that he created spaces for a viewer to be a very specialized screen. This can never be something you have to see with your own eyes. It has such optical power with the LED screen, and it's a I cringe trying to document these things because it's very hard to capture, but it's the best we can do. But it is really something exciting, and I see so much possibility for the future in that. So that's what I'm working on this year. In addition to Astral Array for the Vladem Contemporary, and I just want to express my gratitude to our patrons for creating this beautiful building in the New Mexico Museum of Art, for championing contemporary art. I'm so happy to hear these voices here at Santa Fe. I love the tradition here. I feel very connected to a lot of literally the fabric. I have some beautiful mellow rugs and I have them hanging in my studio in New York, and I think a lot about that. Think a lot about what I'm doing in sequencing light as being related. Because there was a lot of connections between early computation and looms and these machines. And sometimes I think of my work as these kind of luminous tapestries that have certain patterns and sequences, and I deal with time, so these things kind of come and go. But in a way, it's responding to nature and the work here is site-specific, and I got to spend time watching the clouds and the sunset, and really feeling the energy of Santa Fe. That has become part of the piece, and I'm not going to steal the thunder from the big launch, and I hope you all will come and see the piece on Thursday. It's really been exciting to go bring my work here to Santa Fe and work with all of you, and to be able to share the work for the public, and so it's a real thrill, and I appreciate very much you all inviting me to come and speak, and I'd be happy to answer questions if anybody has any. Yes?
Cynthia, Shred Magazine. I'm looking for what time on Thursday we get to see that launch if the public is invited.
Let's see, do we have a time?
Is it nighttime?
Yeah.
It's going to be on, and it has a daytime. Yes, it has a daytime sort of sequence, and one of the great things about the artwork is that it's shielded from the direct sun. So it's on the underside of the breezeway. And because of that, it is visible during the day. And then in the evening, as it gets darker, it has other sequences that are different and made for that time of day. And then late night, it has a very quiet presence that uses very little energy, but has the sense that the piece is still, alive and active, and quite subtle. But hopefully, it serves as a connecting point between the rail yard and Guadalupe Street. And as people come off the train, you can really move through the space, and through a welcoming gesture from the museum, hopefully it encourages people to come into the museum, which is what I'm always excited about, connecting people to what's happening inside, and see how that works.
I have a follow-up question. Did you work with Devendra, the architect, too?
We had many conversations with the team, and it was really wonderful to think about the building. It was a very long process doing a commission. I love doing commissions, but it can take years and years and years. And it's one of these questions like, well, what are the surfaces? What can be activated? And going back and forth, and went through a process of creating a proposal, and showing that proposal, and really being clear with everyone about what it looked like, and all the details of it, and then finally being able to realize this is very thrilling.
Thank you.
Yes?
So this media that you're working with, what is the long-term phase? Do you envision the 22nd century Silver Towers to be
Is it a question about maintenance?
Yeah.
Yes.
Future generations?
Yes.
For the long-term viability, can also be a center fuel for this question.
Sure. I think we engineer these things to the highest standard from the very beginning, working with the highest quality components. It's tricky because it is something that is electronic and digital. The lights themselves, some of the metrics are 100,000 hours that the lights can last if you were burning them straight through at full power, and that's 11 and a half years. But because we're constantly modulating the light levels and they're not on anywhere close to 100%, I believe that will extend life further. There's also a bunch of different components like power supplies, network switches, computers. The code part is what my studio writes, and that is all. There's a clone backup computer in case there's an issue with the computer, the first one of downtime, and we can immediately connect it. The chances of something happening with that are very, very small, and good luck in having installations running around the world without my phone is not ringing, unfortunately. But it's, and I have 2 people in my studios in Brooklyn and Sunset Park. I have 11 people working with me there. 2 people are working on conservation. So we take this stuff very seriously because I want my work to live on into the future. So we're constantly migrating computers and operating systems and doing the behind the scenes work and keeping very detailed notes on how things should work. So, I have 2 kids and I don't want to leave them with a burden of like, here's, 1,000 things your dad made that are broken. So we want to at least throw them a ladder, and it's hard being an artist kid. But there are, there's a whole new field of new media conservators, which I appreciate. And we're working with MoMA and their team, the GSA, on how the best practices. So I think we're in pretty good shape. And I think we have a plan for these things in the future. There already have many installations that have about 4 to 15 plus years that we're working on relanding and figuring it out. So it's an ongoing process. And personally, I'm fine with the temporary. I love Burning Man, where you go there and there's nothing there when you arrive and nothing there when you leave. So this whole concept of leaving no trace I found very interesting. And everything doesn't have to be permanent. And for me, I'm very satisfied to have done the daylights for 2 years. It's not that I need it to be up forever. It's more like if it's become part of the public, hey, it's coming from other voices and people wanting it to remain, then I'm obviously honored to have it there and do everything in my power to do that. But it's really an interesting thing when you think about permanence, and we try to document everything very thoroughly. That's one thing that we do, take lots of notes and keep records of it. And then also be ready for whatever happens. Yes?
Will it change with the seasons?
There's a question, will it change with the seasons? The sequences are set, and there are many different sequences that are randomized. So I engage a lot of chance in my process when I'm making the artwork. So I'm trying different things and making discoveries. So the piece was all made on site. But then there's those sequences that I find are then displayed in a random order for a random amount of time. And it's also very layered. So there's maybe 3 different things happening simultaneously that are all randomized. So I guess my point is that it creates a huge variety already in artwork. It doesn't literally respond to the seasons. It's more connected to, I think, the kinetic activity around it. So because it was made there, I think there will be echoes of things happening, whether it's the train or the clouds. It's more an interpretation. And I'm not creating interactive work. Some artists are using sensors and connecting those to lights, doing things like that, which I'm interested in some of that work, but I find that it takes away sometimes from the art part of it, and it becomes more, it's very tricky to keep this stuff grounded in art, and that's one of my biggest challenges, not let it get into this world of spectacle or these other things that kind of are more entertainment oriented. But I guess I feel like there's a lot in there, and I think that because it is abstract, it will change. Every time you see it, it will be something different and new. And the art maintains a sense of mystery, so that I hope that over time, people will see something new in it every time they see it.
Wow, thank you.
Yes? Yeah.
Quick clarification. So it is your work in the town of the National Gallery in Washington?
Yes.
That's yours?
Yes. The question is it my work, and it's called Multiverse in the Tunnel of the National Gallery. That was in 2008. No. It's been a while. Yes, way back there.
I have a more conceptual question for you, is that okay?
Of course.
Awesome. So you brought up a lot of intangibles in your talk. Words like atmosphere, movement, performance, resistance, pleasure, connection, and time. And this idea of spanning empty space, especially with race-related projects and architecture, ideas of being impermanent, all illustrated via light, which is intangible. You can't hold it. And even the NFT is, as like the next step in your studio practice, is also intangible work. So I was wondering, what is it about the intangible that you find so seductive? And would you speak a little more about your relationship with the unseen and how that's kind of made manifest in your practice and how you apply that in your work?
Thank you. I love this question. Great. I guess resisting identification is sort of something I'm interested in, and maintaining the sense of mystery of what it is, and also the notion of being working with abstraction, because it doesn't add up to an image or text or something that is like, oh, I know what it is, now I can move on. Like, I really like the not knowing part and the kind of discovering, and maybe it's related to those early experiences of burning out, getting lost, and having to relearn and to navigate these new spaces. I think it's very connected to what we're doing in virtual reality. Because when I first started doing Burning Man, I was working in virtual reality, in the early 90s with, someone with Jeremy Lear, one of my professors at NYU. Jeremy Lear is kind of the dreadlocks, is the father of virtual reality, and started all this stuff in Silicon Valley way back when. And what was interesting to me is a lot of those early VR worlds, you can have a flat plane that was very open, and maybe a few like polygons, like a sphere. There's oftentimes some fog, which are these kind of classic computer graphics things. And they were actually very similar to what Burning Man looked like, because you go to Black Rock Desert, and this is a big open plane. But the difference was that these geometric worlds were really dead, and it was like really not very much happening in there. And Burning Man was practically life, and I'm like, wow, everyone here is building a city and doing it together. And that was way more interesting to me, to be present with a group of people and create a communal experience that everyone could enjoy. And being in this kind of arms race of technology, you needed this $1 million silicon graphics computer, and you needed a haptic feedback arm and a special chair, and then you could achieve this, go to this other world, and like, that world is not interesting. And I still think it continues to not be interesting, as we're seeing with all this, Oculus, it can be interesting, there's some experiments, but I still think it is a bit, it's sort of, I really like reality. And I like dragging these digital things out of the digital world and into our space. But I also really love art. I'm an artist first, working with technology. And what I like about light is it has such a strong opticality and has so much power to really interact with our full sensorium. I find that very interesting. But I'm also like these, I guess this idea of taking people on journeys, which is what I do. And I think that's what pieces do. They are vehicular in a way that they, if you want to, they're very open-ended. If you want to participate, great. It's not like oftentimes when you see a television someplace that has this power, it just captures your eye and won't let you go. It's not like that. I'm thinking it's more ambient in the nature of something like Rain, where you have this thing, this other layer that has been added on top of something. You can either dip into it or not. So it's really not, it's not coercive, because I think that this stuff is used in such a coercive way in so many other circumstances, that it's nice to have that freedom, and then to be able to have this space that's sort of neutral, and you can make it what you want. I find that to be very interesting. I think it produces a sense of joy in people, which I'm interested in. I hope that sort of answers it. You have a question?
Well, I agree that everybody wants to be working on my question is also, I was thinking back, and I don't want to ask it because it seems to go in a different direction. Not one direction, but a different direction. And I was thinking back on the kind of technical question, which is, do you like to prefer to use European electronics and those CFCs? Is on the standard that we were working with the CFCs, or is there a new technology
a lot of the lights that we use, I worked a lot with color kinetics. I knew the founders of that. They were all at CMU, and then they got bought by Philips, and now it's become Signify. But I use that a lot for big public installations, and it's more, we know a lot of the engineers, we go really deep into the technology, and I've done a lot of work with my own engineers to create our own LED circuit boards and control systems, and we go really deep. But you have to kind of pick your battles with this stuff. It is very hard to do, and in certain circumstances, you really want it to work day in and day out, especially for an outdoor installation. So having a company that's there supporting you, and we've found a lot of other companies that can help us with other installations where, we're artists in a pretty small studio, so we need to do what we can do, but also find partners who can support us. But it's a pretty international team of people. A lot of the LED technology comes from Asia. But it depends. We're using stuff from everywhere. And, it's been challenging lately with the supply chain issues. Some of these nebula pieces that look very simple, like it's just a piece on the wall, could have 200 different components inside of it. So we're madly trying to gather Raspberry Pi microcontrollers from here and there. There's been a Pi shortage, and so these things are things most of us probably don't even know how to think about. But and that's not really what's important. I'm just happy to be able to take these things and put them out for people to enjoy. Yes, right here.
Would you speak more about generative art? You mentioned that it has a small amount of code. What makes it generative?
The question is what makes work generative versus, I mean, I've been using chance throughout from the very beginning of my work. I was very interested in, Marcel Duchamp and other artists that were doing things with chance and trying things, not knowing, and really using my software almost like a visual instrument and seeing what happened and then capturing those moments. There's been a method of kind of recording the discoveries and then playing back the recordings. Lately, work is becoming more generative, meaning it's being computed on the fly. It's not recorded. But when I'm working, I find maybe 1% of the time something interesting is happening with the computer, and I want to capture that moment. It means 99% of the time something not interesting is happening. So if I left it to its own devices, it would not be pleasing visually. So I'm there as the editor, selecting those moments. And more I'm able to work with generative code and kind of steer it in a certain direction, but then allow for enough randomized elements within it to let it do other things, which I'm very excited about. And that's what's been happening with Cosmic Reef and Cosmic Bloom, which those pieces are generative. So when you load the URL on a computer, it's running code. It's nothing is recorded. And it's a tiny bit of code, relatively. It's 100 kilobytes. But when you run that 100 kilobytes, every time you run it at a unique iteration, it looks like a different piece of the cosmos pops up. You're like, how could that possibly have been created with 100 kilobytes? So it's interesting to me that these very complex things can be boiled down to these essences. And more, I'm finding that things that in nature, like flowers and all sorts of things, have this geometric structure underneath. If you start looking at the symmetry of them and trying to describe them geometrically, it's possible. And so I'm sort of intrigued by that. And I think, in a way, when people look at my work, they're looking at some LEDs and some software, which is kind of these cold, hard materials. But what's happening is much more powerful, much more connected to ways we respond to things in nature. They provoke a sense of wonder and awe. It's connecting to all these things that they're very universal in us. So I find that to be even more interesting, how you can distill these things and recreate things we see in nature in other ways, in a way reflecting on that. And that's really what is at the core of my work. Yes.
I believe I asked a loaded question, but not really that matter. So do you see a conflict, like London clearly is a hold-on issue with modern technology. Do you see a tension between them, either as artists or some pushback from the community? See what I'm saying? And that's where we do this in the East, we do this in India or China.
Yeah. I think the question is the community response to these public artworks and how do that's oversimplification, but how do people respond? And I think with the public works we've done with Daylights, we did extensive work with the community, talking about it, really engaging people so they knew what was happening, as with London. And a lot of the concerns were with environmental concerns, like with light pollution, either into the sky or to the water, and we we're using very new fixtures that are radically reducing the energy costs of the other light we previously on bridges. We're also putting light what we want light. The new lights can focus very precisely, which I think is exciting, that we're not spilling light into the water or the sky. And doing something that is, again, revealing the beauty that's already there. We did have some residents in London on Clean Street who lived right on the river between London Bridge and Cannon Street, and they thought we were going to put a disco light on the bridges. I had to go and visit them in their home like 3 times, and we sat together and talked about it. I'm like, no, this is a meditative, tranquil piece that's elegant and it's slow and it's all that, and they, eventually they sort of came around and recently when we had a favorable advice, they were the first people to call and say, hey, there's something going on. And so they've kind of fallen in love with the piece, they become our biggest fans. So I think it's part of this communication of listening closely to the artists and working with the stakeholders and with everyone to kind of create something that is beautiful and putting it out there in a way that is very sensitive to its environment. And that's why these things have been successful. But it is important to do that in public art and not this thing sort of coming from somewhere else. And, you know, it can go back to you and has many times. But I think we're getting better at navigating that. And it's all about communication. Good. All right. Well, thank you so much.